Welcome to Therapy, Coaching, and Dreams. I am your co-host, Dee Kelly, and I'm here with Jim Shalley, and we love spending some time talking about those things that take us toward the inner journey to give us a little bit more clarity and self-awareness and freedom in our living. And this particular week, we are talking about a particular personality style. For those of you who have been following along, you'll know that we've looked at a Jungian model of personality styles and looked at the four major quadrants that divide themselves up between masculine and feminine expressions and static and dynamic energies. And this particular week, we are looking at the Initiator, which is a dynamic masculine energy. We have referred to this personality style many times and given some characteristics in the past. We're going to go a little bit deeper, try and give you some examples, and see how it might display itself in your life, even if this isn't a primary style for you. If it is a primary style of yours, we hope you recognize yourself in the midst of it and gain some insight as to how to use it to great advantage and the cautions that go along with having this style if it's not balanced. So we're going to spend a little time in that. Jim, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Dee. Along with that, it is interesting that if you're a natural initiator, to sit still and listen to a podcast may be challenging because you're out initiating things. Even though if someone suggests a good podcast, an initiator probably, if they're intrigued by it, would listen to it. Would they listen to it all the way through? I don't know. Because initiators, they love to keep moving forward and setting goals and accomplishing things.
So if they are driven by objectives and goals, maybe we ought to front load this podcast with things they can accomplish and do to bring about the change they want to bring about.
Absolutely. If you listen to this podcast, your relationship will be a 100% turnaround, and it'll be great for an initiator. Yeah.
Hey, Jim, one of the aspects of your work over the decades that you've done this, you've been invited into several settings to work with people who are initiators, people who are in charge of companies. Sometimes in the health profession, there are particular individuals that carry a lot of that initiating energy. So give us a couple of examples of what you notice in somebody that gives you the clue that this is probably their dominant personality style.
That's a great question. Usually, they're encouraged by family or coworkers that they respect to examine some of the reasons as to why people aren't listening to them anymore. Because usually they keep moving forward so much so, and they set goals that they're so focused on that listening to other people's feedback can be challenging. Because they are so movement oriented that if they have a direction and they're in a role of leadership, oftentimes their blind spot is truly, and I say truly in quotes, really listening to feedback from others around them. They sometimes will give lip service and they'll ask great questions, but it's almost like they're going through the motions, letting people express their opinions, but they've already got their mind set. So in that context, usually, obviously in the relationship, they aren't listening very well at home. They're goal driven. So of course, maybe accomplishing things like buying a new house or a car, things like that, they're very good at. But sitting and listening to their kids or their wife or their partner, that's always more challenging. So either of those scenarios, typically it means that I figured some things out, and if the group would just go along with me, we'd be okay.
So then it's probably fair to say that with an initiator, they're probably good at seeing and responding to a crisis that's in the workplace or in a project because they can kind of envision the direction they want to go quickly. But they are maybe the last to notice a crisis in a relationship?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely say that. Yeah. And that's why if you're in an emergency situation, that personality type will always show up. because they just naturally think they know and oftentimes do know exactly the things that need to happen. But yes, they're also the last one to know that you've offended all these people because they would say, I don't care that I've offended these people. We needed to get the job done.
We
Remember,
need to
they
move forward.
get
We need to move
abs-
forward. We need to complete the project.
absolutely that becomes the most important part of it. So of course they minimize the impact it has on others because that's not significant to them. And as we talked about in other podcasts, they're typically in relationship in their personal lives with a responder, someone who, to the extreme, enables that personality type to keep functioning because they take care of things, and it's easy to rely on them in that sense. But when it comes to relationships, that's where they obviously have blind spots.
So give us a list of some adjectives that characterize an initiator so that initiator might be able to see it in himself or herself, or if I'm in a relationship with a person that would give me a clue that this is somebody who's a relation. You gave us that they were very goal driven, problem solver,
Right.
but what are some of the other characteristics that might be labeled that way?
Yeah, I think the basic expression is back to is goal oriented that accomplishes goals. So that's the basic kind of expression. The the primary task of that personality is to differentiate themselves from the group and to really be more individualistic driven. That's why they don't focus on the relational dynamic. They're just simply, uh, this is what I need to. This is what needs to happen. And so they initiate. They to use a kind of a strong word. They conquer things. They go into something wanting to accomplish and conquer and on some level bring order to things, which is the other side of it as far as a stabilizer in the masculine energy. But on the surface, it has to set a goal and accomplish that first before it can. Oftentimes, they have a hard time staying in place because they see the next goal to accomplish.
And conquering isn't just conquering people, it's conquering problems,
Oh yeah,
conquering
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I would.
challenges.
Yeah, I think the most extreme negative would be the conquering of of countries in some ways where people
Yeah.
feel colonialism or any of those things has that tenet to it.
You
Um,
used, you used another phrase that I just want to ask about. You said that there is a drive to differentiate from the group. Is that just another way of saying that they are extremely competitive?
yes. Mhm.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and again, it's like, the classic example in our history as a nation are those individuals that saw the West as an opening to go conquer. And so they would have their families but they had a dream of they wanted to go west, "Go west, young man, go west." And so with that individual focus, there are lots of other people that will follow that initiating energy because they see something no one else sees, and they have the courage to go after it.
And one of the ways you could maybe highlight in somebody that this isn't their dominant style to ask the question, do you enjoy when you win? And if the answer is yes, that there is a tinge of initiator in you that you like that feeling of
Yeah,
winning,
absolutely.
even even though you may not be by nature an initiator, you can appreciate how somebody has that feeling maybe to more of an extreme.
And back to our belief that these expressions are in all of us. And so to your point, if I can identify just a small way in which I initiated something and I had the feeling of winning or competing or whatever, that then you can say, see, it's in there. It may not be natural, but how can we bring that out? And to your point earlier, it's like this is the expression that creates change because it can be you can explain something to someone, but until they get a real sense that they have to have movement in a direction that could feel pretty selfish to make the change. Well, I can't do that. What would other people think or how would they feel? Well, that expression doesn't care about that. So you'd have to really work hard at wanting the goal so much so that you would be able to block some of the other expressions to be able to accomplish the change that you want.
Yeah, that's an interesting example or situation that you just described where you want something in life, but you find it incredibly difficult to pay the price of what people might think. And
Yep.
so you become stuck and you can't figure out why there's no movement. and you have that initiator within you, but it is squelched by that people pleasing side or
Yep.
the
Mhm. The
different.
fear. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It is. It is
And that,
interesting.
again, that's why so many people, my expression would be they give their power away to that individual because they will strike out on their own and do some things that the other personalities don't want to do, but they will attach to them. And that's the delicate part of that is I can follow an initiator someplace, but if it doesn't turn out like I think it should, then I can start criticizing the initiator
Hmm.
and then become a
Yeah.
malcontent and be upset by them. But I didn't have the courage to do it on my own. I'm using their energy, which again, back to the overall expression of what we're talking about, it's so common to use someone else's energy that I have inside of me, but I don't want to acknowledge to accomplish task or to do things that I may think I want to do, but don't have the courage to do it. That's why I'm saying internalizing all these expressions is so profound because I really can accomplish the things that I want to accomplish and not have to rely on somebody else's energy. I don't know if I said that as clearly as I intended, but that
I
that's
loved that, Jim.
that's the value of all of this from my perspective.
Yeah. We are, just a heads up for listeners, we'll be talking a little bit more in depth on projections in a future episode. But we project onto initiators both the good and the bad. We project the
Absolutely.
hero image onto them when they are doing things that bring about what I'm hoping wants to be
Mhm.
accomplished. And then I also project the villain on them.
Absolutely true, yeah. And then
Yeah.
I can blame others that it didn't go well,
Yes.
rather than not taking accountability for "Wait a minute, I didn't wanna go do this, but I did it, and it didn't turn out like I thought." Well, okay. You want all the power without the responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know this has ever been looked at in terms of research or statistics, but it just occurs to me that those who are true initiators probably carry far more projections than
Yeah.
any other characteristic personality style.
Yeah, I'll never forget the election of President Obama when he was standing there at this one scenario. I remember thinking, "There's so much projection on him." That people
Yeah.
are so hopeful of something that's gonna happen, and that had to be such a heavy burden because you do. I mean, on some level, you may want it, but man, it can turn on you so quickly.
And it did.
It
I
did.
mean,
Yeah.
it
Mm,
carried the opposite projection that
it did.
neither one of which were his responsibility, but
Absolutely true. Yeah. And I think
yeah.
that's why it's so important for our leaders and all of us to have some sense of that. Of knowing when we're carrying a projection or when we are projecting ourselves, and that's accountability. It's like the balance is between compassion and accountability. If you have too much compassion, it's too extreme. If you have too much accountability, it's dictatorial. So what's that balance look like? And I think that's what we're striving for internally in each individual is that balance.
I had a job not too long ago where I would have people sometimes come in and talk to me, and I'd be in the midst of this conversation. And the thought, just because I had trained myself for my own survival to listen with this sense of, oh, I'm just the projection screen right now. This person is dumping all over me. I'm the villain. I am the embodiment of everything that they don't know what to do with inwardly. And it changes your ability to receive it. I mean,
Mhm.
you can set a boundary and say, yeah, this isn't about me, which sometimes is very appropriate. There are other times where you just nod your head and hope that they feel good about unloading and say, great meeting.
It's
Talk to you
so
soon.
true.
Yeah.
It's because what they're unconsciously trying to do is to bait you into being the opposite. So they can
Right.
so they can defeat you, so they can argue with you. And
Yeah.
if you don't argue, it's like through the election cycles in therapy, it's been so interesting as people come in and they'll project their anger and frustration, and they're frustrated on some level because they never know what I think, which is how it's supposed to be. But they'll say, "What do you really think?" And I go, "I don't have any thoughts right now about this, but you do, so continue." And yeah, you're right. They'll feel better at the end of the session on some level because they vented it. But some of them will get so frustrated because they'll keep projecting. I know what you think. I know you're thinking this. Like, no, I'm really not. They want somebody to really be the opposite because they, in my opinion, unconsciously want to be more balanced. But
Ah,
they also make it really hard to have that conversation because they're so certain and aggressive.
it is
And
interesting, though, that they want to be in balance, but they are trying to accomplish that externally instead of internally.
absolutely, which is the whole thing we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In contrast, I mentioned sometimes being the one that is the villain. You have to also have the discipline when somebody comes in and does overt praise on you and go, yeah, it's nice to hear, but it's
Mhm.
not really
It's so
about me.
it's so true.
And
It's like
that's equally hard.
yeah, it is. I mean, that's why I used to say, working in some nonprofits, that those that praise you the most are the first to turn on you
Mm,
because they both project. You're gonna save this, and then when you don't, or you don't save it the way they want you to, then they're the first to criticize. And again, that's all projection.
yeah. And
It's it I
it
mean,
can get in here.
it's a fascinating trait. I mean, it really is. If you think about it and you're self-aware at all, you'll see so much that takes place of, "I don't wanna take responsibility for this, but I'll tell you to, and then I'll criticize you if you don't do it the way I want you to do." Yeah.
When you raise your own internal self awareness, which is part of what we're trying to bring about in this podcast and in our conversations, you're able to walk through life with a little bit less roller coaster ride of what other people think
Yeah.
and to receive people as being on their own journey and respecting that they have a lot to learn just like you do. And it changes your ability to engage people that others have a tough time engaging because you know it's not about you
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
terms of their journey. So the initiator, there is this great energy that they bring. We've mentioned in previous episodes that a lot of people ride the wake of the energy, the wake they leave behind them, like a boat that leaves waves. They can others can ride those waves or attach a ski rope and be pulled along
That's right.
by that
Yep.
individual. And again, we describe it as a masculine dynamic energy, but it is not male or female.
No.
There are both men and women that contain this energy that is so strong and potent, and it is a moving force within the world that gets things done.
Absolutely. I mean, again, that's why, back to your point you made earlier, to identify it in each of us, it's as simple as a hobby.
Mm,
I
yeah,
mean, someone who all of a sudden has a need to woodwork, where'd that come from? That's initiating energy. It brings some fulfillment, but they also have to start a project, or they have to have an idea of what they want to make. That's all initiating energy. It's an individualistic driven kind of thing. I would do this regardless of what anybody else is going to do. That's initiating energy. I see something I want to do. I don't care what people think. I'm going to do it.
well, that's it for this episode of Therapy, Coaching, and Dreams. If you're enjoying the podcast, we'd love for you to share it with someone who might appreciate it as well. And if you are interested in working with either of the co hosts, you can do so at their respective websites, Dr. Shalley at afccounselors.com or Dr. Kelly at inyourdreams.coach. Thanks for being here. And until next time, keep growing, stay curious, and take good care of yourself.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff.